Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Magdalena Żelazowska. I am the head of the communication team at European Network Remembrance and Solidarity, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you at the official opening of the 12th European Remembrance Symposium here in Warsaw. The organizer of the symposium is European Network Remembrance and Solidarity, together with Polish History Museum. It is hard to imagine a better place for this symposium since the topic of the edition we are holding this year is commemorating and narrating freedom. I will just briefly remind you that symposium is meant to bring together the representatives of institutions, European institutions dealing with memory. And Polish History Museum in Warsaw is one of them. So it is my great pleasure to invite on stage the host of this year's edition, Robert Kostro, the director of the Polish History Museum, and also the chairman of European Network's Remembrance and Solidarity Advisory Board.
First of all, I would like to greet our distinguished guests, especially Minister of Culture of the Republic of Poland, Hanna Wróblewska. I would also like to greet all our guests, distinguished members of Parliament or ambassadors. Director Rogulski, co-organizer of this event, and Professor Jan Rydel, and all of you. It's a great honor and pleasure to me to host the 12th European Remembrance Symposium and so many eminent guests in this building of the Polish History Museum. We are in a new building, but actually it took 17 years before we arrived at this stage of our museum. This project is not yet completed because we are still working two levels above on finishing, on completing the permanent exhibition. Nevertheless, we have already conference, educational facilities, and organized many interest projects. And also we have temporary exhibitions projects. So you are welcome to in our premises. It's great pleasure. I hope atmosphere of this building will be good and you will remember this visit. The symposium is held under the title Commemorating and Narrating Freedom. And why should we talk about freedom today? Freedom is and should remain a key concept for most institutions active within the framework of ENRS. The network was established to foster dialogue of historical remembrance between European countries that were deeply affected in the 20th century, especially by aggression and totalitarian terror. Freedom also has a special value in Polish history and, of course, in our museum's program. And it is also extremely important for the venue we have met today, namely for the city of Warsaw. For centuries, the Polish-Lithuanian parliament met in the royal castle of Warsaw in the Old Town. 2 kilometers from here, Polish kings were elected in Warsaw's Wola district. Also in this city was signed Religious Tolerance and Freedom Act Confederation of Warsaw in 1573. And also the first European modern constitution adopted on 3rd May 1791. Warsaw history testifies also to the fact that in order to defend freedom, we must sometimes pay the highest price. In the 19th and early 20th century, here in the citadel, 200 meters from here, was located Russian political prison, where Polish patriots were jailed. In a nearby location, also members of the Polish underground national government of the January uprising 1863-1864 were executed. In August 1920, Warsaw defended itself against the Bolshevik invasion, which threatened to spread terror into the countries of Central and Western Europe. The city also rose up twice against the Nazi German occupation during the World War II. First time it was the Jewish ghetto uprising in April 1943. Second time, the Warsaw uprising in August 1944. The streets of my city were also stage and witness of the demonstration by democratic opposition and solidarity in a movement against communism in 1970s and 1980s. Dear guests, 35 years ago, the roundtable negotiations in Poland had ended. The elections in June 1989 brought the collapse of the communist dictatorship. We believed that the fall of communism would bring freedom, democracy, and peace across the continent. It did for some time. But unfortunately, after 25 years, in 2014, a new threat arose to freedom and peace in Europe when Russia attacked Ukraine for the first time. Our concern is even greater since winter 2022, when a full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine began. But before the Russian tanks crossed the Ukrainian border, false historical theses and historical justifications had already been put forward as an excuse for the invasion. We believe that this conference has important value because free and honest debate over history is not a question of theoretical knowledge, but a contribution to stopping aggression and restoring peace in Europe. Thank you very much.
I would now like to invite on stage Rafał Rogulski, the Director of European Network Remembrance and Solidarity.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in Warsaw. Contrary to Director Robert Kostro, I rarely have the opportunity to open any of the INRS projects in Polish. So allow me to use my mother tongue during the opening speech of this year's symposium in Warsaw, and please use your headphones. Szanowna Pani Minister.
Madam Minister, Director, ladies and gentlemen, European Remembrance Symposium, organized each year by European Network Remembrance and Solidarity, is supposed to create, for all of us, representatives of institutions that disseminate knowledge about history, the possibility to share experiences, successes, and problems. It's all about supporting our opportunity to cooperate above borders and to make sure that our viewers, participants of different projects that we organize, to bring them closer to different points of view about the history of the 21st century, making sure we get to know each other better. And this is the goal of each edition of this symposium, European Remembrance Symposium. We always invite you to debate an important topic for all of us this year because of the location where we are today that has just been described by Director Kostro, but also because of the 85th anniversary of the outbreak of the Second World War, the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Uprising, 35th anniversary of the fall of communism, and the 20th anniversary of EU enlargement to the east, and 25th and 15th anniversary of NATO enlargement with the countries from behind the Iron Border, Czech, Poland, and others, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Albania, and Croatia, so among others. So we decided to talk about freedom because museum narratives and historical education speak about it, and it's hard to talk about. It's hard to find a better place to talk about freedom than Warsaw or the Warsaw History Museum. So freedom is related to responsibility. So it is a challenge of sorts. On the one hand, a responsible historical narrative has to strive at truth about the past, research, updated knowledge, as well as free and liberated discussion, allowing for different points of view. On the other hand, as we strive towards freedom, there is a risk of selective memory, conscious or subconscious selection of narrowed down interpretations, which, without a broader context, may lead to misinformation, disinformation. That's why we need a sovereign, courageous and critical approach to the past. Freedom of discovery and interpretation of history is an opportunity for us to confront a difficult legacy, to see it in a broader, transnational context even, and to work in favor of collective memory that allows you to understand, that connects and doesn't divide. So after all, the pathway towards freedom, even though it's bumpy and related to some sometimes difficult feeling of responsibility, offers you the possibility to build the future peacefully. And at the same time, freedom in historical discourse is freedom not to strive to consensus at any price. It's freedom to stick to your own opinion. Sometimes it's freedom not to remember or even to forget. So in this context, what is particularly important is the category of responsibility. Responsibility for conveying and not conveying reliable historical knowledge, for avoiding distortion of historical memory, avoiding disinformation. And today, in the world of media and politics, it's not hard to come across disinformation. Whether we want it or not, disinformation doesn't have political colors. It's an immanent part of authoritarian and totalitarian governments. It also happens in democracies. So a free discourse about history may be preventive. It may prevent divisions and conflicts that others would like to provoke. All societies, democratic societies, are, in a way, ideologically divided. Our thinking is different, and freedom to think freely is an immanent human right. But when political divisions are accompanied by lack of will to find a consensus, then we put ourselves at risk, but also our relatives and others. So striving at common understanding and agreement through in-depth historical discourse, which is the goal of our network, is not only a preventive measure protecting us from conflict, but also a patriotic activity that protects our fatherlands and our community. Ladies and gentlemen, we are meeting at a place that is symbolical for many reasons. And the previous speaker, Director Robert Kostro, has talked about the symbolism of the citadel, while the Museum of the Polish History is a museum of community. It was established and then it kept developing, and it was due to decisions of ministers representing different political powers. And it is their decisions that helped to to take those decisions and develop this impressive building. The Museum of Freedom, because the Museum of Polish History is the museum of fight for regaining and maintaining freedom. It's a building in this location, this citadel, a symbol of Russian oppression. It is us that impart meaning to this place, and not the Russian occupant that built this place against Poles. So that is why we wanted to make sure that we organize this symposium about freedom in this location before the permanent exhibition is opened, because we wanted to make sure that you, specialists and experts in organizing exhibitions, you can see this unique process of the development of such exhibition, and the creators can talk to you about how they are presenting freedom. So we also wanted to show you Warsaw with its numerous locations of remembrance, because in each of those places, category of freedom is constitutive. So at the very end, let me thank all those of you who have contributed to this meeting. First of all, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for accepting our invitation. And I do hope that this is going to be a place for you where you feel good and that you will be full of inspiration. And thank you to Director Robert Kostro and the whole team of the museum for co-organizing this year's symposium. Thank you to the whole team of the European network, including Maria Naimska, who's the coordinator, and Aleksandra Kalinowska and Joanna Orłoś. Thank you to the members of different bodies, advisory bodies, who have come so numerously. And last but not least, let me thank Minister Hanna Wróblewska. It wasn't obvious for us that you would find time at the beginning of your term of office. The Minister of Culture of the Polish Republic is a non-typical personality on this. It's not a typical politician. It's a person who for years has run one of the most famous galleries of art. She has an international experience, so she knows what we are doing on a day-to-day basis. So we organize different projects that are related to history and art. Minister, thank you so much. So I wish you all a fruitful and creative time in Warsaw. So thank you.
She has already been introduced, but nevertheless, it is my pleasure to invite on stage Hanna Wróblewska, the Minister of Culture and National Heritage of Poland.
Dzień dobry Państwu.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's difficult to speak after such a great introduction. So this year, 12th edition of European Remembrance Symposium that since 2012 has been prepared by the European Network Remembrance and Solidarity is a particular place when it comes to remembrance of freedom, because we're living in a place where this remembrance is being sieged. That's why it is so great that you decided to focus on the phenomenon of freedom. Freedom is a fundamental value that cannot be, and anyone cannot be deprived of it. Artists, scientists, members of academia, researchers, the freedom of speech and freedom of conducting scientific research is the foundation of the nowadays arts. This is the flywheel of all our actions, and this is something that makes our societies going. History, not this distant one, offers us some examples. What happens if there is no freedom? Authoritarian rule deprives us of freedom in all domains of our life, in our economic and social and private lives. But in Poland, we know how to strive for our freedom. We know that freedom is not taken for granted, but we know that it is achievable and that we need to strive for it every day. And we as a society, we are striving for it effectively. I would like to draw attention to some historical events that are so close to our hearts. The anniversary of one of them will be celebrated soon, and the chair, Mr. Kostro, has already said about it. This is we will celebrate it at the beginning of June, because Joachim Lelewel, during the November uprising, against Russian rule has written an important page on our historical books. So really civic movement that gathered and brought together millions of Polish women and men that motivated society to strive for its independence and freedom. It was a very strong event for all of us. That's great to have events like this, because this is a great forum to celebrate freedom and to discuss it in such a large group of people. What will happen here will affect our future. I would like to thank to the chair and organizer, the European Network Remembrance and Solidarity, together with all partners. I would like to say a big thank you to the host, the head of the Polish History Museum. That's great we have institutions like that, because as it's been said, I have my museum background, so let me list a list of Polish museums: the Museum of Warsaw Uprising, the Museum of Prisoners, the Warsaw Ghetto Museum, Auschwitz-Birkenau, Józef Piłsudski Museum in Sulejówek. I wish you a fruitful conference over the next 4 years together with the Polish history. It is an integral and important part of the history of entire Europe. Thank you very much.